Hello and welcome, my name is Lewis and you're watching Internet Inspiration episode 4. So today we've got this quite amusing subject of two mating ladybugs, the yellow kind, and we're going to dip straight into it. The reason I wanted to paint this one is it's a macro photograph, which I think I'm probably going to be painting a few of in this series. And it's just got some interesting colours and it's an interesting subject in general. The kind of blurry background as well, I want to see if I can have a go at with our kind of painting style. So we're going to start off as we usually do, and that's just with some basic line work to see where every little part's going to go. So when it comes to macro images, you've got to remember that compared to the actual subject, the camera is massive. So because there's such a huge aperture on the camera, the focal point, I'm not sure what it's called, will be really narrow, which is why you get the kind of blurry background so close, and there's just that tiny little sharp pinpoint that's actually in focus. So if I can kind of capture that and get used to it, I'm hoping that maybe I can utilise macro effects in my imaginative painting a lot more. It's quite interesting trying to get the complex colours in these ladybugs, especially in the shapes that they are, especially because they're quite reflective. A lot of the colours change in ways that are kind of hard to decode. My method for dealing with this kind of thing, where it's quite hard to actually read the colours, is just to really try and, just stick in there, do you know what I mean? Really try and find the right colours that should be there, and remember that it doesn't really matter if your colours vary, unless you're going for absolute realism. It's really something that you'll hear a million times anyway, is, you know, look at the shapes of colour rather than trying to draw something that looks like a ladybug. Just look at the shapes of colour that are there and try and mirror them, and you can probably see in the way of the process that's quite heavily ingrained into my painting process. At least it starts off with these kind of abstract shapes, and I'm just trying to actually read the colours that are there, or at least read the shapes that are there, and get everything on the canvas layered out almost like tiles. Okay, so at this point we can start to zoom out and see what our composition looks like, because we've nearly got the whole canvas filled in. We have got the whole canvas filled in. Next we need to get every detail filled in. So we can see that the composition works nice, it's nicely framed, and we can move forwards and get more detailed from here. I've added the spots on the back of the shell, and also some of the more finer colour details, like the fact that the shell goes quite nice and blue around here to reflect the sky, along with this nice kind of violet where the spot kind of interferes with it. So now we're just going to keep working on it and getting that detail in, and then I want the kind of spiky, quite light, I want the kind of spiky, quite light bits that are on all these stems that they're sitting on. You know, just to really get it all brought together, as well as the reflectiveness as the shell. This is a really fun subject to paint, not just because it's in macro, but because there's some really nice texture details in here. You know, we've got the really nice shiny shells with those specular highlights, and then even underneath that layer of shininess there's quite a lot of variation in the local values and the local colours, what with the black spots on the bright saturated orange shell. So there's just a lot of different interesting colours and patterns to work with that really suit for nice practice in uncommon textures. So for the reflections from the sky, you can see that the two different local values, even though they're on the same thing with the same reflective coating over on the shell, they'll act slightly different, and you've just got to kind of make sure that those colours lap over. So for the sky reflection, which we've got on the shells, that kind of specular reflection, we've made it quite a bit bluer on the black spots and a bit lighter. And on the shell it's going to be exactly the same, only as it gets bluer it's going to get a lot less saturated, because the shells are quite saturated with that kind of yellowy orange. And that's kind of where some of the more logical processing happens that you really have to do in your brain to kind of help you to figure out what colours things really are, because it might look easy on video, but it's quite difficult, especially for new artists, particularly for new artists, to be able to tell what colour something is exactly, and more importantly, to be able to tell what value it is. So if you can kind of understand why things might be a certain value, or why things might be a certain colour, and how they might change, just moving in the correct direction, towards blue or towards red sort of thing, can really help you out. If you're just playing guesswork, or you're really just trying to use your eyes on the piece, you might end up struggling because you don't understand why things change colour in the way they do. It's a really big help just to understand the theory behind it. I suppose there's kind of two approaches when it comes to painting. There's the approach where you build in your structure from the start and you make sure everything's perfect, and slowly build along with every stroke being the correct stroke. And there's the approach where you just kind of slop it in and then shape things afterwards and try and mend them to look closer to what you want them to look like. And sometimes it's fun just to find a kind of balance between the two. So this painting is very heavily on the side of slop it in. There was a very slight 5-minute drawing that we did beforehand, and then we just jumped straight into it. And you can see the consequences of that in the way that a lot of it's had to be changed multiple times. It's been recropped. I've had to use the lasso tool, and that's just really the sacrifice that you make for drawing quite chilled and for not worrying about whether you get things right or wrong. Either way is perfectly valid, and I would say that either way can probably end up with similar results too. But there's going to be different trade-offs, and at the end of the day, it's often going to end up taking a similar amount of time for either. You're going to spend all of your time doing the setup and making sure that something's going to turn out properly, or you're going to be spending all your time doing the fixes and editing something until it turns out properly. So I think I've got enough detail into this one now, and I'm ready to call the episode an end. This was really, really fun to paint, especially with the kind of shiny shells, and it gave me a really good platform to kind of push my tiling technique as far as it will go. The way we kind of started with just abstract shapes and tiles and slowly built over the whole piece was really quite fun, and it's good because it feels like you progress so much faster when you do that kind of technique of just going straight in a la prima with the colours, and in digital you can just really just jam them in so fast. There's a few ways this one didn't go perfect. I feel like the readability is a bit muddled, especially around the kind of heads, and you can't really tell where the focal point is meant to be with this one. So I could have done a lot better in that area, and maybe even changed a lot of the colours in the actual photograph just to kind of exaggerate that and point towards the parts where I want the focus to be. But I'm quite happy with where we finished and the level of detail. And from what we learned painting this piece overall. So to bring it to the series, this episode of Internet Inspiration has been more of internet reference. We haven't really changed much about the actual picture, which I think is going to be more common ahead in the future episodes. Some of them will just be taking inspiration and painting what we see, and some of them will be taking inspiration and kind of moving it in ways we like. But I quite liked this picture, so there wasn't much to change about it. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you.